Hello everyone. I hope you enjoyed Marek's talk about iOS development. So it's time for modern way of Android development. But before we start, please let me introduce myself. So I'm that person who prefers to work alone, to just concentrate on my upcoming tasks that I got. I'm introvert. Concentrating and sitting alone and working alone, it makes me feeling better just to close all of my tasks. To prevent any of issues in the code, I'm using my analytical mindset. So every issue that I got in my programming life and usual life, I'm using my analytical skills. Also, I love to look under the hood of any technologies or tools that I got. So I think that I'm a researcher. It's about everything also in my life, the same. Yeah. So what makes me a good team player? I'm always care about everything, everyone and everything as well. So I'm just prefer to work in that team who when everybody feels comfortable. So yeah, so I always think about everyone in my team, and I suppose that it will be very important. Based on these characteristics, I think that I'm kind of Kowalski from Penguin of Madagascar. So now more about my experience. If I will compare my experience with railway stations, it will contain 3 of them. Fortunately, I haven't started from Eclipse, because Android Studio is much better than Eclipse. Everybody knows it. So my first station is called MVC. Actually, MVC is that kind of solution that we got when our activity class or fragments represents as main controller, and all of this logic is done in activity class. So just imagine that in your activity will be everything. The activity class will contain a lot of kind of code, and I suppose it's not the best solution. Okay, doesn't matter. So. After that, I just decide probably there's some better solution. So I sit to my chain of experience and move to my next station, which called MVP. MVP, it's almost the same as MVC, but on this pattern we got presenter class. So presenter takes all those logic from activity and fragments and put there. So any user interactions that we got in activity will be handled by presenter. I think it's smart, it's better, and furthermore we can test it easily. Also, I have used some class interactor to handle my background chats and all those communications that I get. But now Google presents JetPack with MVVM solution, so that's my final station. MVVM allows us to write code in single responsible way. So every class that we got, it's only takes a single responsibility, and we don't have those boilerplate code. Now, question is, why we should migrate to? I just would like to remind you, Android Q is now in beta, so new technologies is coming, and it is very important to get up-to-date technologies, just because new features come and we need to follow them. So as I mentioned previously, we got Android JetPack. Android JetPack, what is it? It is a set of libraries that we got. And starting from view model, so yeah, we don't need to implement view model by our own. We got class viewModel, which we might to extend and handle all those lifecycle events that we got in activity or in fragment. To pass data in proper way and just follow to some rotation screens, we got live data. Live data save all your data from screen and don't break up when we got rotation screens, let's say. Previously, I remember that time when I must to implement some custom SQL class to handle all SQL transactions that I got. It was awful because it will be full of ugly code. Now we got Roam library. Roam actually represents annotations that we might use to handle our database interactions. So it's much simpler to use Roam instead of implementing custom classes. Roam allows to generate classes, database class, just for you. Previously we have used Fragment Manager. Now we got navigation component. Actually, navigation component allows us to build graph between some screens, fragments actually. And easily invoking some fragment transactions, we can move to another fragment. Simple enough. Also, we got pagination component. Pagination component allows us to load data partially. Just imagine that you got 1,000 rows in your data, and it shouldn't be loaded just in one time, single time. We can use pagination. Previously, I have used intent service to handle all those background services. Now we got Work Manager. Work Manager actually allows us to provide us simple APIs that we got to use, and so it's simple to use, and so on. All those libraries will come to us just with name Android X. Android X is new it's new group IDs that we got, so we don't need to use our old one, Android. We can just use Android X in our Gradle dependencies. So all those libraries that additional libraries that will come to us instead of Android SDK that we got, we can use with starting Android X and so on. So now, finally, more about MVVM architectures that we got. Probably you recognize this picture from Google Code Labs or Google documentation. It's very famous, I suppose. So let's discuss step by step. On the top, we got UI controller. UI controller is actually our activity or fragment or dialog. So here we handle all user interactions and all this logic. Actually, here we can use our data binding component to simply bind viewModel fields to the screen. viewModel contains fields of live data, as I mentioned previously. Live data allows us to subscribe to lifecycle and pass it directly to the screen. So whenever field will be changed, let's say as Marek's previous example, username or password, all those values will be changed as well in viewModel. Also, we got reference to repository class. Repository, that guy who decides to which data source we should fetch. So it might be a database or it might be API client. And finally, we got only database or API, as I mentioned previously, actually. So for handling database, we are using a Roam library, as I mentioned previously, and for API, we are using retrofit. I suppose it's time to work about code. So, as a sample application, I got JetPacks. application. So this application contains facts about cats. Who doesn't love cats? Come on. So we just simply load our data and store into our SQLite database. If there's no data, we invoke our API client. If there's some data in our storage, so we simply would like to show it as well. So let's step by step, class by class, discuss it, our implementations that we got. Here we got UI controller activity plus layout. Layout actually XML. It's also references to UI controller. So we got activity class. On the top we got injected our ViewModel factory, and ViewModel factory actually is provided by ViewModel providers class that we got. Later I will explain you why we should use ViewModel factory instead of just simply providing instance of CatFacts ViewModel. So below, just on create function, we got data binding functions. So that's how we can use our data binding. And below, on very end of create, we got ViewModel with field CatFacts, which we might to observe. And whenever the data will be changed, so we can simply provide it to UI. As I mentioned previously, we are using data binding, and here we got variable adapter. So again, if you will meet with same example as Mark explains to us, so about some fields, we can simply bind, instead of adapters that we got here, we can bind ViewModel and provide any data and provide any field to components. Same as I do here, but here I'm using my custom adapter, binding adapter. So I simply would like to bind adapter to recycle view using actually data binding, just make all those things done in XML instead of activity class. In activity I would like to keep my some logic. So about ViewModel class, we got provided repository class. We got reference to repository, and as I mentioned previously, we got extended ViewModel class, which is provided by Android SDK, and that's how we can simply fetch or update our facts that we got. Inside of ViewModel, we got factory class with injected repository class. Factory actually we might to use because we have custom constructor. In that case, if it will be empty constructor, we don't need factory at all. But if we got some custom constructor, we might to use factory class. And on next steps, I will explain how we can improve this solution. But now let's discuss about repository class. So we get reference to API client and to DAO object. DAO actually is our room class, let's say. And here we simply return live data. But here we got some black magic action task, and we should handle API client call. What is action task? Is our custom. But problem is that we might to write this class. As you can see, it's a usual async task, but problem is that we need to handle API client invocation just in background thread. We don't have any other option. So that's why I'm using kind of hooks here. and again, in next steps, we can discuss what we can improve here. So now about API client and DAO object that we got. So here on the top we got DAO object with annotations that I mentioned. Still, we need to use some SQL scripts to provide any data to handle them. But as you can see, sometimes we simply can annotate with insert or delete annotation, and there's not a problem with that. But previously, probably you might know about it, that we might write all those SQL scripts just in plain text, so it was really awful. But what about API client that we got here? Still, we need to return some call or list. Yeah. So now about dependency injection. As you might see, we are using dependency injection, and we are using actually a Dagger framework, dependency injection framework, and still it's very important to keep our data up to date. I hope somebody is familiar with Dagger. But anyway, I would like to try to explain how it will be worked. So step by step, we got component class. Actually, our component is that class that contains all those instances that we got provided in modules. So we got component and modules provided in annotations that we got here. List of modules. Attention, here we got Android support injection model. It's not our, it's Dagger's model, and we are using it just to make our dependency injection in modern way. So below we got injection methods, and in previous solution we might write a lot of injection functions just to inject every target class. Just imagine it's garbage. And here we got builder class, which allows us to bind our instance of application. So that's how it looks like. And about modules. Actually, modules provides new instances that we got injected in our target classes. So here we got network as an example, and here we simply provide instance of retrofit client, so API client. And now about injection for main applications that we got here. Here we got interface has activity injector, which we need to override function activity injector and provide actually our dispatching Android injector type. We simply can receive it after injected our class, as we do here. And same again, we get it here just from Dagger model. So there's now our classes. It's library provides us some magic, let's say. And whenever our target classes will be injected, it will provide any instance that we got in our class injection. So here, example, in our JetPacks we got Android inject function. Here. So just imagine previously I have, let's say, 20 activities or fragments, and I might inject every of them. So, and to do that I need to write my custom functions inject. It was awful. But now we simply inject our main application, and after that, using Android injection class, we simply inject our target classes. Starting from this step, what we can improve? we can add our custom view model factory. As I mentioned previously, we got every view model contains factories. Just imagine you will get about 20 view models in your project, and every should contain own factory. And if a constructor will be changed, so you need change injection for this constructor. So it will be awful. To avoid such situation, we can use our custom, very popular solution in internet, so it's not ours one. So we get provided our view models map that we got injected in our constructor, and using annotation, Dagger's annotation, map key, we can create our custom annotation to provide class of view model. It's not the same as in iOS, so simple. We need a little bit work around here. So, in view model, here is example of providing instance of our custom view model. So here we must use into map annotation and view model key, actually our custom one. And just don't forget to add this model to annotation component annotation. So one step left. It's about you remember this black magic in repository. To avoid this situation, we can use RxJava. Actually, there's a question. Why we should use RxJava when we have live data? Everybody probably, I hope everybody knows about reactive programming. And live data is very similar to Rx because we have subscribers, we have observe, but RxJava provides us a lot of functions that we might use in our project. And furthermore, we can handle all those functions in background thread. So using schedulers in our project, we simply can use main thread or in background, let's say. So take a look. Let's take a look on the example. Here we got DAO and API client updated, let's say, and here we got return time maybe. Same here, maybe. Why so? We got a few classes of RxJava, so it might be observable, it might be flowable, and maybe or single. So maybe allows us to handle any errors, any error kind. So let's assume we don't have any network connection, and we can't fetch get facts from API client. It will be error occurred, so we need to handle it by using maybe on this case. So let's take a look on repository class. Here we should return our observable, subscribe on and observe on background thread. And here we got flat map, so it will be one more change here. So whenever we got empty list in our SQLite database, we will load new data using this function. Same here, subscribe on background thread. And we do some additional things here to fill up our database. So as you can see, it's much simpler to use more efficient way instead of using async task here. So if we compare MVC and MVVM, here we need to implement much more classes instead of one. But just believe me, if we will got our project larger, so our classes will be grower and grower. So in activity class, all all those logic will be handled in one single class, and it will be really huge. And then it's just impossible to make some changes or updates. So here we got a few classes implemented, and we don't need to have any ugly code. It's simple. And one more picture that you might know about it. It's testing pyramid. So now we slightly move to testing. Here we got unit test, integration test, and UI test. And Google offers us to use Espresso library, and also as an example we can use Roboelectric library. But here we got some additional problem, because integration tests might be launched on a device, on physical device, or on emulator. It takes a long time to launch them on devices. So our solution is just to move our integration tests to Roboelectric. And Roboelectric actually allows us to do that. So we can simply using our dependency injection and Mockito library to mock our data and launch our Roboelectric test. So let's take a look at our dependency injection in testing. Same, we got our test app injector component, and here we got provided two modules, test modules, with mocks fill up here. If somebody is familiar with Mockito, probably you think it's kind of strange to use Mockito here on that way, but we're actually using some additional libraries, extensions for Kotlin. So here we got such beautiful way, let's say, of representation of mocks. And here we got implementation of our test with using annotations config. We can provide test application that will be injected, and here we are using new Roboelectric. So here we need to pass scenario, and actually it's from Android X that we got in new libraries, and do some assertions on activity function. So here we got reference to our activity, and we can invoke our functions from this activity and make some assertions here. And below it's just extension, so it doesn't matter. So if you would like to contact with me, you can use GitHub, and there's some contact information. Thank you for attention. Please ask me some questions. So in our screen we got we may have a lot of view models, just separating and dividing in by feature. Because just imagine that you got a huge activity, and it might be divided by some features by few models. But attention here that we don't need to provide only one single instance to other fragments that we might be used in another fragment or in another activity. So it might be problematic to work with such few models, and anyway, it's not so clear to provide single instance of view model. But it's absolutely okay to have a few instances of view model provided to a single screen that we got. So thank you, somebody.
Okay. Do you have any more questions from the audience?
Probably.
No? Okay. So, thank you.
Thank you one more time.